Thank you, first of all, for making time for this program. And because you selected this session, you've got a general sense of the topic and the content that we're going to cover for you today. It's our belief that there's not an educator or a professor anywhere in higher education today that isn't seeking absolute best practice, best method, best approach for the delivery of online lectures, online content, the creation of that, and very importantly, the techniques to maintain engagement with the audience, engagement with our students. So that's the topic today, where I'm joined by a distinguished panel of people who have given this topic a lot of thought. And we're going to concentrate for you on things that are practical, tangible, useful ideas and approaches to help lift the game of all the people that are facing this exact same challenge. You know, how to do the highest quality education in a situation where, you know, we can assume some significant portion of what we do and what we deliver, what the students will consume, is going to be done via Zoom or WebEx or Hangouts or some similar technology. So my name is Mark Harris. I'm a member of the board of directors at the Planck Center for Leadership and Public Relations. I've spent the last few years as a visiting professor at my alma mater, the University of Alabama, one of the great professional experiences of my lifetime. And we've brought together for you today a panel of distinguished leaders, both in academia and from industry, people who bring deep expertise on both sides of that equation, but most important, I think for our purposes today, people who are on a personal mission to ensure that of relations professionals enters the profession ready to create value and deliver high impact for their employers whenever they hit the marketplace. So let me introduce the panel to you. First, I'll start with Dr. Denise Hill. Dr. Hill is an assistant professor in strategic communications at Elon University. She's bringing 30 years of industry experience to this panel. And I'll tell you, if the topic is related to the virus, but if you have questions about the virus, she might be a pretty good person to ask. She's been the chief communications officer or held senior leadership roles at Novartis in pharma, at Quest Diagnostics, which is doing a lot of the testing today, and at Cigna Healthcare. She's presently a member of the board of directors of PRSA, excuse me, Denise. She's a member of the Page Society in addition to a broad range of other industry associations. So thank you, Denise, for making time. Dr. Diana Martinelli. Diana is the dean of the communications program at West Virginia University and the Widmeyer Professor of Public Relations. I'll just say, Diana's research has been published in every scholarly journal that matters in communications. She's also a member of the Page Society. She's also a member of the board of directors of the Planck Center. So Diana, thank you for being with us today. And then Ron Culp, for the last 10 years, has been the director of the graduate program in advertising and public relations at DePaul University. Before that, Ron held senior leadership communications roles at multiple Fortune 500 companies, and that career was followed by a very distinguished run on the agency side, including Ketchum, where he is credited with being one of the driving forces of making Ketchum the presence that it is in the Midwest and making the Chicago office in particular the force in our profession that it is today. So Ron, again, thank you. Thanks to each of you. And to begin, let me ask each of you to comment on what is your primary consideration at this point? What's like your design point for what you're doing as you prepare to go into the fall semester? And if Denise, if you wouldn't mind having the first words for us today?
Sure, happy to. So, like many universities, Elon is looking at how to deliver instruction in a way that meets the needs, actually exceeds the needs of our students.
Yeah.
In this challenging environment. So we will be resuming classes in person. However, because of the pandemic, all students cannot be in the classroom at the same time. So a key consideration for me and my colleagues is, how are we going to deliver in-person instruction and this combination of a hybrid, because we can't have all the students in the classroom at the same time. So half of the students will be accessing what is going on in the classroom remotely. So I am looking at how best to actually use the technology that we are being required to use. So often, pre-pandemic, we used technology when it was the most appropriate channel to deliver content. Now, we are being forced to use that. However, in being forced to use it, I am looking at, okay, where is it most advantageous and how can I use it to its maximum effect? At the same time, focusing on engaging students, because I don't have all of them face to face. I've got half of them looking at this through a screen. I am looking at how best to make sure I deliver the content and I cover all of the knowledge that I want them to have, and do so in a way that still focuses on this high level of engagement.
Terrific. Exactly right. Diana or Ron, anybody want to pick up on that?
Sure. At my university, at West Virginia University, the majority of our classes now are scheduled to be online, whether it's a synchronous or an asynchronous environment. And that said, like Denise, way to increase engagement and interaction with students who are in that online environment, but also to build a sense of community. You know, a sense that we're all in this together and we're all here to support each other and to help each other to learn, grow, and improve. And so I would say those are the two primary considerations that we are exploring and working with our faculty to implement for this fall.
Okay.
I could jump in with, I guess, like one of my multiple choice questions on a quiz might be answered in, I agree with all of the above. The other goal I'm trying to achieve is finding that delicate balance between challenging students and not overwhelming them. You know, we sometimes forget, but I think we know more now, having had the experience in the spring term, that they're facing a lot of other issues, and it really is, it's a difficult time. It's also a difficult time for faculty. In the 10 years I've been at DePaul, I mostly teach electives, and the electives are very much, how do I involve students in doing things, hands-on experiences. So then shifting the teaching approach to how do I make this happen, and keeping it relevant and getting their engagement, when it was a lot easier when I took them to agencies and major corporations, and we did case studies and we did brainstorming sessions, and it was very much hands-on, active, and very exciting for the students. So now shifting gears to try to make that kind of environment happen in an online educational experience is a big challenge.
Yes, it is indeed. So let's extend, let's just pick up right there and extend the train of thought and go from maybe higher level and conceptual, like what are the design points. Let's talk about very specific things now. One tip, one idea, or two or three that you plan to implement because based on your experience in the spring, you know it worked well. And let me ask Diana if she can, or Ron. Let's let the guys have a voice. Hey, Ron,
I'll
your
jump
turn,
in
Ron.
with a couple of thoughts to get the ball rolling. Again, as I left off with the fact that I want this hands-on engagement, what I'll be doing in the fall term and I tried it in the spring term and it worked beautifully, was to increase the students' social media engagement. And I'm trying to get them to really focus on the two major social media tools used by business and that they focus on, widely acceptable, meaning LinkedIn and Twitter. So each week I'll be requiring students to monitor media, watch things, talk to people, and find two elements relative to the class topic that we'll be studying that they must post and comment on Twitter. And it'll be a hashtag for grad 595, my class number. And then they'll be able to monitor what each other's saying. They may comment on it, they may retweet it. They just have to be actively involved. And the other thing, as far as LinkedIn is concerned, we've set up a LinkedIn page for our program, and a lot of the students are already signing on to it. I want them engaged there, but even more importantly, I want them to really focus on their personal profiles on LinkedIn. And I get their attention by saying LinkedIn is replacing resumes. Forget about resumes. I can give you case after case where students and recent graduates have landed jobs through LinkedIn, not their resume. So let's beef up the resume. And if you don't have 500 plus LinkedIn connections by the time you graduate from our program, then you're in real trouble with me. So those are two things. And then the third thing that I'll be focusing on, shorter lectures. You know, the attention span for myself as well as my students, as we all know, runs about 10, 15 minutes. So that traditional 1 hour lecture or so that we were accustomed to, or longer, needs to be made shorter. So what I'm trying to do is I'm interviewing some of the people who would normally be showing up in our classes. I'm doing a Q&A with them, minutes. Then the students to go read and watch other videos during the week, rather than in that specific class time, we would normally be having this discussion. And so bringing those kind of experiences in, and I think that, again, trying out this shorter lectures really worked well in the spring term, and that's going to be the game plan going forward.
Okay, Diana, Diana, a minute ago, I could just see Ron almost coming through the screen, ready to answer that question. So I shifted gears, but let me come back to you now.
Okay, sure. Well, in terms of engagement, I think a couple of ideas of things that we're trying and have done in the past. And one is just giving students several options for assignments when possible, so that they have some sense of agency. They're able to select a topic that they get excited about and are able to then they're motivated to really dig into that assignment. And perhaps do a better job than they would if everybody gets the same assignment. So I think giving them some choice and agency is important. I think maybe asking students to come up with a set of course values or course classroom etiquette online. You know, what's important for us as a class and as a supportive community in terms of how we interact on Zoom. Or Google Hangout or whatever it may be, because this is a different form of communication when we're talking about so many students in some of these classes. And so I think having them help to set the expectations helps to decrease their anxiety a little bit. Everybody's on the same page of what's important and how to interact. And then I think lastly, in terms of engagement, it's helpful to make your notes and detailed outlines available to students and let them know that those are available to them so that they are free to participate, to listen, to actively engage, and not feel like they have to try to take notes at the same time. I think it's also really important because we know a lot of students are going to be ill and they're going to miss that synchronous class, or they're going to have technology issues. And so, you know, recording that lecture if you can, or that class discussion, either audio or video, and making it available. But again, also making those notes available to them so that they can reinforce the learning and decrease their anxiety about the class content.
Last word on this one, Denise?
So one of the things, and this is a specific assignment that I have used in the past, and I used it when before we actually were in lockdown in March at the height of the pandemic, although the pandemic still seems to be at its height. So, and taking the adage of learning, one of the ways that you learn and that you know something is if you can teach it to someone else. So there's one assignment that I did that translated very, very well to the remote environment and students being at home, and it's for an introductory public relations class. And I had them, it's sort of a little bit in the middle of the semester, because I want to make sure that they understand what public relations is, how it fits into strategic communications, and I want to make sure that they can explain it to somebody else. And that somebody else that I choose for this assignment is actually their parents. And I ask them, you know, do you feel like you know more than your parents at this point? They're all proud, yes, and you know, yes. And so I said, okay, let's prove that. So I have them actually conduct research, and that's the research part of the plan, and they have to gauge their parents, and it can be a parent, it can be a caregiver, an adult, whoever is in the household. So they have to conduct research and gather that knowledge, and they do this in teams, and they have to develop research insights, and then they have to, based on those research insights, develop a goal based on the level of knowledge that they found that their audience has. They have to develop a goal, an objective, strategies, and then they actually have to develop and produce one tactic to help them achieve their goal and to help them achieve their objective. And they have to implement that tactic, and then they have to measure the effectiveness of it. So the assignment always worked effectively even when we were in the classroom, but I found that it worked especially effectively when they were at home, because they were able to ask their audience right there, and they were still able to work. It's teams of 3. They were still able to work as a team. They just connected on FaceTime or Zoom or WebEx. And so that assignment example of advanced medium, we have to use technology, and focuses on one of the learning adages of teach it to somebody else to prove that you know it. And then the students have to actually prepare a presentation that they give in class, and the presentation was done on Zoom or WebEx, and that worked very, very well. So that's an example of a specific assignment, and if somebody is interested in a rubric or more information, I'm happy to share that, but it does take advantage of the remote environment, and it can be done in a hybrid environment.
That's terrific. So I just a real quick recap. I mean, so like respecting the attention span, duration, sort of making that adjustment or accommodation. Diana talked about engaging the class and setting a mutual expectation for how are we going to do this? How are we going to get through it together? Behavior, professional standards. And then Denise, respecting the environment and taking advantage of the environment. One thing nobody said was, well, I'm just going to take my old lectures and roll them out online. You know, everybody searching for the innovation that is going to make this work. And that I'm sure the students would truly appreciate. And it leads to the next question. We may have already gotten into this discussion, but you know, we would all know as professional communicators, there's a difference between our content and their experience. You know, our content, getting through our content and creating an experience for the audience. So could I ask you to maybe just pick up on what you were just describing and talk about things that you're being very intentional about creating and sustaining the engagement for the student, which, you know, let's give them credit. They got to do this 3 or 4 hours a day, you know, looking at a laptop screen. What are we doing about engagement? And maybe Denise, you can kick us off on this one if you don't mind.
Mm-hmm. So the example I just gave of that particular assignment, I look for assignments like that so that students are not focused on where most of the class is focused on them, a self-paced kind of class, because students have indicated that, you know, just putting stuff up on an electronic site and asking students to do most of the work is what we're here for and doesn't work. So I am looking for and seek assignments that engage the students in producing work and in demonstrating to me and to themselves that not only they know the knowledge, but they can apply the knowledge. So it's on a lot of applied assignments versus having students have to sort of have a self-paced course, because it's not a self-paced course. That's not what it is. And the students have said, you know what, sometimes all I had to do was, I was told to read a chapter and I was told to watch videos, and I just didn't have any interaction with other students or didn't have interaction with any of the professors. So I am very, very active on focusing on the opposite of that, so that students don't feel like, oh, that we have sort of just given them this electronic environment and given them some book chapters and some videos and says, okay, you need to figure this out and here's the schedule and you need to do it on your own. It's not an on your own. And we are still here as the teachers, we are still here as the instructors, and we are still here to guide them and impart knowledge. There may be a bit more that they have to do, but it's not all on them.
Mark, I'd like to pick up on that if I may. Online pedagogy research really shows that there are 3 types of engagement with online instruction that really should be included every week, whether you're synchronous or asynchronous, and that is student-instructor communication and interaction and vice versa. And this can be anything from, just the interaction via Zoom or WebEx, and interaction via email, or feedback on assignments, general announcements. Also student-to-student communication. So whether you're doing breakout rooms in Zoom or you're having a discussion board for the class, the students need an opportunity to interact with each other, and also student and then content engagement. And I think that's what you're talking about as well. Not just reading something and responding, but really meaningful, critical thinking, critical engagement assignments, whether they're case study analyses or data analysis, whether it's reflection, response papers, anything that's not busy work, right? None of us has the patience for busy work anymore, particularly this environment. So if you thought that, if I can every week have student-instructor interaction, student-student interaction, and student meaningful content interaction, and that we can engage in consistent and regular communication. Being human first, communication is critical, and so communicating early and often, and really reaching out to students immediately if they're not showing up or if they appear to be struggling.
I'll jump in. Great ideas. I was taking a note, and I think it'll be great for the Planck Center not only to show this this webinar, but I'll also encourage them to capture some of the bullet points and maybe have a list of some of the suggestions, because I've learned a lot just from the comments from the 3 of you. One thing to pick up on the engagement of students and how critical it is for them not to think it's busy work. We require our graduate students to have an e-portfolio at the end of their experience. And years ago, it used to be full of a lot of class projects. And now if you look at our portfolios, and we're about to put them up on the website shortly, those portfolios are things that really they did, and it appeared somewhere in the outside world. So trying to keep that engagement going. My class this fall is developed around the book that PRSA put out, the PRSA Foundation put out last year, that the Specters put together, called Diverse Voices. And the Diverse Voices, so I picked up the book as the textbook, and then I expanded it to how it works in the business concept and context. And so it's Diverse Voices from ageism to xenophobia. So I expanded the topic. Well, because this amazing profession that we're in, I was able to find over the past couple of weeks for the fall term, individuals who will engage one-on-one with students for interviews. The students are now going to research, then conduct interviews, and then they'll write up the profiles of these individuals, which then we'll publish, so that they'll have something else to go into their e-portfolio. I think is, again, a way to go around when you refer to the busy work. that is not busy work. You're really doing something that's probably going to help your career. And certainly expand your network.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Really
Right.
good
And that's
advice.
so, I'm sorry, Mark, I was just going to say, and that's so important for them to understand, you know, how that class is meaningful to them, why it's relevant to them, right? The why behind the content and the activities.
Totally.
Thank you for mentioning Diverse Voices by the PRSA Foundation. So I actually have a chapter in that book, so I appreciate you mentioning that and using that in the classroom.
You very may well be getting a phone call from one of the students. You're on the short list.
Happy to.
All right. Well, we've already begun the discussion that I want to pick up on right now. But what about informal feedback? All the informal interactions and transactions that occur outside a classroom. In a remote digital environment, how are we going to maintain the quality there? Anybody got a thought?
Well, I mean, I think office hours are so important, and what the experience of our faculty has been, and it may be different for others, but it's that, you know, just because you have your office hours, virtual office hours, doesn't mean they're going to come. Yeah. And so I like to build in a required, it depends on the size of the class, but 1 or 2 required office hours that they have to make an appointment with me. And it's an opportunity to either go over a recent assignment or to talk about an upcoming assignment, but it's more importantly a way to connect and to check in with them and to see how they're doing and to kind of get a gauge, how is the class working for you? And then how are you doing personally? And then what can I do to help you improve even more? So I like that idea of actually requiring it. Another idea that I think works is to make it less formal. So it's not visiting during office hours, but setting up, hey, I'm going to be available for virtual coffee chat. You know, between 9 and 10 a.m., for instance. You know, I'm just going to be hanging out. And that's a way that seems a little more personal and maybe a little less intimidating. And lastly, I think just being able to hang out 10 minutes after class, if you've got a synchronous online course, just as you would in the classroom. And when people were joining the class before, everybody's kind of getting settled and logging on, having those informal conversations and just checking in with people, I think is also a good and easy way to connect with your students and them to connect with you.
No wonder you're such a good professor. I have professors hiding from me. And I've kind of taken that up. I really don't like office hours, mainly because I spend a lot of time in the office. And I do love drop-ins. I like it to be in real time. So I kind of tell the students, it's a 24/7. Send me an email or, God forbid, a text message, their preferred mode of communication. And let's do it right away. I don't want to set up a meeting for Thursday. I don't know what I will be doing Thursday afternoon. But it may not be, I may not want to be necessarily meeting with a student. So let's solve it when it's on your mind, because I'll crash and I'm going to get the best feedback. So just put a subject line of the class name, because we all get a lot of email. And let's make it happen in real time. And it really, really works. I also drop in to class early when they're doing Zoom calls. And those first few students there, at first they're startled that somebody is really there. But you have some of the best conversations. So I do think it's really critical. I love your idea, Diana, about the required time. I know some of my colleagues are doing that. It is an excellent way to require a check-in. Most of my grad students, I don't have to worry about that. The fact that I'm going to be hearing from them because they're so focused on career that they better be in touch. But if not, I'm going to make a note to make sure I follow up with those that are not as big into outreach. Good idea.
No wonder you're such a great professor, Ron.
Yeah. I actually found that I was meeting more with students at the second half of last semester when we were in the lockdown than before, even though I had office hours, encouraged students to come by the office hours. So I had more students, and I during the lockdown, I said, I will meet with you. We'll set up a mutually convenient time to meet on Zoom or WebEx. And if you just want to meet, if you just want to face, if you want to talk about a project, if you want to talk about your favorite show on Netflix, I just wanted to make sure that they had that opportunity for connection. And many of them took me up on it to talk about projects. I also met with the students who were working on projects in teams. So they're actually required to meet with me before they start working, and then I meet with them throughout to give them feedback. So those were standing meetings anyway, and then beyond those, and we continue those. So we just continue those virtually. And beyond those, I always said to students, almost at the end of when we had class virtually, at the end of class, I said, remember, I am available to meet with you. So please don't hesitate to reach out and just send me an email. We'll find a mutually convenient time. I'll send you the WebEx invitation and we will meet. I had meetings with students that were 3 minutes and they got what they needed. And then I had meetings with students that were much, much longer, individually and in teams. So I think just reminding students that even though we are virtual, that the meetings have not gone away, that we are still here. And I think sometimes students just took advantage of in a positive way, of the virtual environment and said, you know what, I can just, meet with her like that. I just, and we can meet for 5 minutes and it's very easy versus me going into the office, that kind of thing. So I thought the meetings virtually work very well, and I'll continue that and continually remind students that you are available to them virtually.
Yeah, I tell you, just listening, terrific conversation. And I think that like the common denominator there felt to me to make normalcy in a very abnormal situation. I mean, how much can we maintain and replicate and I think the intent behind that is absolutely terrific. And since it is such an abnormal set of conditions we're in right now, that comes with anxiety, that comes with stress. And so there's a lot of discussion now about the mental health implications of this set of conditions and the personal well-being of all of us, and especially our students. Have any of you had time to give thought to that and how you might address or mitigate any of those issues?
Yeah, well, I think, to be successful in teaching or just in life, you have to be human first. And that doesn't mean easing standards, but it does mean being more flexible and empathetic and understanding. And I think we've already talked about how important it is to reach out to our students, immediately if we see that they're slipping, they're falling off the radar. But one of the things that I like to do is give a virtual oops card, if you will. And this is kind of like the old Monopoly get out of jail free card. And so you might give students a couple oops cards. And what that means is if they miss a deadline or they want to redo an assignment that for some reason they were rushed or they didn't do their best work, they're allowed to use that oops card, no questions asked, right? And I think in this kind of an environment where people are so anxious, just them knowing that, gosh, if something happens, and I forget about that assignment, I'm not going to get a 0, I'm not going to have a large deduction, but I can use that. It's a little bit of a safety net. And so that's a way to try to help alleviate a little bit of the anxiety on the front end for students.
I love the virtual oops card. It's going into my syllabus tonight. That is a great idea. And let me tell you one of the reasons why. A colleague of mine was telling me last week when we were going through plans for the fall that a student during the spring term, which was all online, a student said, called her and said, it's really difficult. I cannot make class that night and I'm going to be late with the assignment. and explained all she was going through. And she says, oh, that's perfectly fine. I mean, you don't have to be that upset about the experience. And the student said, well, in your syllabus, you say that excuses require a doctor's notice and a doctor's excuse. You can't get a doctor's excuse for something like this. So, you know, we edited that out of her syllabus. So I think it really does show the empathy we need. I guess I go back to my retail experience. I keep coming back to, I sometimes refer, which drives my colleagues, my academic colleagues crazy, by referring to students as customers. But, you know, we always, you have to not give the customers what you want to give them, but what they want and what they need. And so you really have to listen differently. That's what I love about Zoom. When I see the full class in front of me, I read them far better than if they were in a classroom spread out with the shy ones hiding in the back of the classroom. So Zoom allows me to say, you know, I think that student has some issues going on just by her lack of engagement, her parent concern, in one case this last quarter, actual tears as the class started, and then constantly going off video. You knew something was going on in that student's life. So I do think that this technology, even though not perfect, does give us some additional tools to judge what's going on. And certainly one of those tools for me is far more empathy for what they're facing during these strange times.
And I actually address, when I tell students that I am available to meet with them, I actually address that. And I say, you know, if you are, there's a lot going on. If you, with this assignment or with this class, are overwhelmed or having problems juggling or just want to talk in general about these things, please reach out and let me know that, and we'll figure it out together. We'll talk through it and figure it out. I just know that and sort of address it head on so that you do demonstrate that empathy for what's going on and for the situation that students are in.
I'm really glad I asked that question because you guys all came to play on that one. So look, I think we're getting close to the time envelope that we were shooting for. Let me just ask if we could go around and maybe there's like a quick final word from each panel member, a note of encouragement, an observation, just anything, and we'll head down towards the finish line here. Ron, I'll give you the first opportunity.
Well, I think, again, I hope we capture a lot of these bullet points because I want to come back and steal every one of these great ideas I've heard. But one of them that I'm working into the fall term for a Zoom class is to start the first 15 minutes, actually sign in 15 minutes early to Zoom. And if you want to, you can join me. I'm going to be calling it open mic. And during that time, we're going to talk about anything but homework, classwork, or whatever. I want pop culture. I want you to talk about the latest season of The Bachelor, or whether Chef Kiki and Captain Judy are going to make up on Below Deck Mediterranean. Whatever the issue is that you want to talk about. It happened by accident because I usually start the Zoom call about 15 minutes early, and I noticed 3 people showed up. And so we started talking about The Last Dance, which was the great documentary featuring Michael Jordan. Well, the class was on leadership, and that documentary was all about leadership. What an incredible experience it was. And it got all the students engaged. And what was interesting, you're supposed to say, don't necessarily talk sports with people who aren't interested. It was the women in the class who really got into Michael Jordan and that whole discussion. So we really accidentally tied the whole thing in. So I think engaging students that way. And part of the other thing that I want to make sure is I flash back to my college days and what I would have wanted to be taught rather than from an outdated textbook and boring lectures. So how do you make the experience something that they want to tune into week after week, and then to give you their best work? And by letting them have a say in it, your class is going to be a success.
Yeah, Ron, I think that's so important is currency, right? The world moves so quickly, and my goodness, 5 years ago doesn't look like it does today, and 10 years ago certainly doesn't look like it does today. And so ensuring that whatever reference materials, readings, case studies you're using are really current, that are studies that students are going to be excited to read and engage with and not roll their eyes at because it seems that it's from an ancient time. And I think too, Ron, you talked about interviewing professionals, short interviews, video interviews, and bringing that into class. I think now more than ever, it's a wonderful opportunity for faculty members to bring in current content, whether it's podcasts or blogs or these virtual quick class presentations, not a guest speaker for the whole class, but perhaps an alumnus or an alumna who wants to come in and you can just say, what are you working on now? Right? And then have students do some research before they come to class about that person and their company and submit some question in advance and ask a few questions. And so it's an easy lift for the alum, and it's not too long that students are finding it difficult to continue to pay attention. And I think it's exciting. So again, it's really an opportunity to start to engage them more in the profession and some of the professional materials and content that's out there.
And it's important for faculty members and educators who may not have been bringing people such as that into their classroom to reach out. More often than not, I hear people say, well, I don't know that person. You don't have to. The greatest thing about being in academia is you can ask anyone anything and they want to help, especially if students are what it's all about. So make the ask. Look at what I have in your class. Technology allows them to get there a lot easier than having to get in a cab or drive to your campus. They'll do it in a minute, and it's a great experience for the students.
Yeah, and the other thing, I'd add two things. Both of you have addressed currency and focusing on topical issues and making sure that those are addressed and incorporated into the curriculum. So there are a number of things going on in the world today, from health to social justice, and no professor should be afraid to incorporate those things in the curriculum, even if they feel like they don't know what to say or they don't want to say the right thing. That's actually not an excuse for not addressing topical issues. And if a professor, because students are going to expect that. They're going to expect those topical issues to be addressed. So if there is an instance where a professor might not feel knowledgeable or might not feel comfortable, stepping aside is not the way to handle that. But to Ron's point, reach out to somebody else and have somebody else come into your classroom and address that. So I would say that, making sure that those issues are incorporated into the curriculum. And then the other thing that leave with is this webinar, and the reason that we are here is the students, and we are focused on the students, and we are focused on the students' learning and their engagement and their well-being. And I think every professor has spent the summer figuring out how to do that, and we're still doing that because we are so committed to making sure that despite this challenging environment and despite these changes, that we are delivering and educating our students so that they can go out and become the most effective next generation of strategic communication practitioners. And with that said, we also need to recognize that we are the ones delivering that instruction. So while we are there for our students, we just need to also make sure that we take a minute and recognize ourselves and just make sure that we are also, in addition to caring for our students, that we are caring for for ourselves as well, so that we can indeed deliver that instruction and so that we can indeed be there for our students.
Here, here.
Yeah.
I want to take your class too.
Yeah, I love that, Denise, you know, and
Absolutely.
modeling ways of being and modeling that, you know, we're human too, and we're in this. You know, if we are ill and we're going to be late turning back an assignment, then letting them know, hey, look, you know, I'm running a little bit behind. And just as we're a little more understanding and forgiving of them, you know, it's reciprocated in a relationship. So I loved your final comment.
Thank you.
Yeah, words to live by, definitely. Ron reminded me of something. I heard Bob Woodward speak a little while back, and he said the 4 most powerful words in the English language are, "I need your help." So when you're going to make the ask, don't underestimate the power of just, you know, people wanting to feel needed. So look, that is a wrap. That was a brilliant, Denise. I thought you just gave us words to live by and words to end on. I want to thank each panelist for the insights that they brought to this discussion and the time they took to prepare to deliver a very high quality discussion. It is our hope collectively that you found something in this discussion that you can use to lift your effectiveness, that you can improve the quality of the experience for your students, and that together we know and we are confident that we are preparing them to enter that world of work, to deliver impact and deliver quality. And while some personal interaction is lost, little else gets lost in the translation. Little else need get lost. So thank you for taking the time to join us. If you enjoyed this program, if you found something useful, please share it with a colleague. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Mark.
Thank you, Mark.